confession, and I did something bad. Really bad. It was real bad.
It's okay, my child. It's okay. Just tell Father Ryan what you've done, and I'm sure the Holy One will forgive you.
Are you sure? Because this is really bad.
It's okay, my son. It's okay if you've done something terribly bad. Just tell Father Ryan what you've done, and I know the Lord will forgive you. I promise you that.
Okay, I'll tell you. Well, I was at your house, and I kind of stuck my wiener inside your wife when I shouldn't have.
Okay.
And then I drank your last beer. I'm so sorry.
Wait, you did what?
I said that I had sex with your wife.
No, not the thing about having sex with my wife. The other thing you said after that. Say that again. I want to make sure that I heard that correctly.
And then I drank your last beer.
Yup, that's what I thought you said. Did thou not know that it is a sin to drink a man's last beer? Did thou not know that that was the Lord's beer? Did thou not know that I am going to...
I didn't know. I didn't know it was bad to do that.
Did thou not know that the Lord is going to smiteth thee?
I didn't know God didn't like that.
Lord, smiteth this heathen, smiteth thee with all the fury of God.
I mean, come on, dude, I didn't know. I didn't...
Thank you, Lord. That's why you're my dog.
Zombies are very, very dead, but they're not in their graves.
Well, hello there, my creatures of the night, and welcome to another bone-chilling episode of Saturday Night Horror Theater! Alright, ghouls and gals, tonight we'll be reviewing The Unholy. The Unholy stars Jeffery Dean Morgan from The Walking Dead and Supernatural, and it was also produced by Sam Raimi of The Evil Dead and Drag Me to Hell fame. He did all those movies, and yeah, The Unholy. Wow, this was like the first. This was the first horror movie that I've seen in theaters since theaters have kind of gotten back open and people have gotten vaccinated and stuff like that, and. Wow, ghouls and gals, I have to honestly say, I didn't know exactly what I was going to expect from this movie because I hadn't heard anything about this. I hadn't read any reviews on this, watched any trailers for this fucking thing. It almost kind of seemed like to me at first that this movie was just like fucking shitted on into theaters because theaters needed something new and people wanted to watch something new aside from like shit that they've been fucking showing for the past like 9 months to a year or whatever. And wow, holy fucking Christ. There was a reason why there wasn't any trailers of this movie playing on TV or any trailers of this movie playing on the internet or anywhere, because this is the most boring fucking movie that I've seen in like a very, very fucking long time. It has like this really cool fucking premise, which is kind of a spin on like the Nightmare on Elm Street Freddy Krueger story where Freddy Krueger gets his power from like people believing in him. Much the same as Mary, the monster or villain in this movie. Mary gets her power from people praying to her, and basically she's like this demonic like false prophet. Mary was this woman who was killed back in the day by a bunch of like old-timey fucking settler people who like killed her on a fucking cross, and then like they tried to like harness her evil spirit and put it inside of this like doll or whatever that they called a kern, a baby kern. They say that a lot in the movie, and it's just like gets more and more ridiculous every time they fucking say it. And well, that happens in the beginning or whatever, and Jeffrey Dean Morgan comes into town because he hears about this cow that's been mutilated or whatever, and it turns out that the cow hasn't been mutilated. They just kind of like branded it with like a Metallica like logo or whatever, and so he's kind of just like, oh well, fuck, like this isn't a story, like I can't fucking sell this or whatever. And so at this point we find out that Jeffrey Dean Morgan's character is like a disgraced journalist or whatever. He kind of got his shit kicked in for like lying about a whole bunch of different like news stories and stuff like that in an attempt to like get clicks and to get famous or whatever. And so he kind of tries to do the same thing. He's kind of like, hey, well, let's make like a better story. And so like he hears like this weird voice like calling out to him, which is so fucking goofy in the movie. It's just like, hey, come over here. And he's like walking over there and he's like, huh? Yeah, what's this? What's going on over here? And like he walks to this tree where it's the tree where they hung a Mary or whatever, and he sees the like this little like doll thing or whatever, and he's like, I'm gonna break it. But he just breaks it, and he's just like, oh yeah, let's just make up this story where like I broke this thing and like an ancient curse comes out and stuff like that, and that's actually what happens. So I thought that was kind of on the nose a little bit, but kind of like, yeah, kind of funny, I guess. And the movie like legitimately attempts to like kind of go into the lore of like Christianity and like this character, this fictional Mary character, because at first they think it's like the Virgin Mary, that people think that they're praying to the Virgin Mary, but they quickly find out that they're not praying to no Virgin Mary. This is like the slutty Mary. This is like the demonic Mary. Yeah, so the movie, it's so fucking boring, ghouls and gals. Like honestly, I was completely fucking bored throughout that entire fucking movie. I fell asleep I think like twice in the movie, and I kept trying my hardest to fucking keep myself awake, but like I kept falling asleep because there's nothing that happens in this fucking movie. They're just running around in circles, and Mary hardly comes out. Like there's hardly any like horror elements in the movie. In the trailer that I'm showing down below right there, that has probably like all of the horror elements in the movie. That's probably all of the times that Mary comes out in the movie. And like she's a weak fucking character. We don't get to see her a whole lot, so we don't get emotionally invested with her. We just get little bits sprinkled here and there, and like the things that we do get sprinkled here and there look fucking funny. The CGI looks fucking terrible. This character is completely CG, and she looks fucking terrible. They should have just made this like a practical effect and just had somebody actually like in a robe or whatever, and just had them with like ugly skin and stuff. But instead they did it with CG, and it just looks terrible. It's gonna age terrible. It's gonna look even worse like a year or two from now. And speaking of aging terribly, this film looks like it was straight fucking dropped out of the fucking 90s. In the beginning of the film, they have like this title sequence that says The Unholy. And like the movie shouldn't have even been called The Unholy. Like the movie should have been called like Mary or something like that, or like The Unholy, Mary's Revenge or some shit like that. It should have been called something like that. They should have referenced the Mary character, because The Unholy makes it sound like it's something else completely, and it's not fucking that at all. It's a boring fucking knockoff horror movie that tries to like get elements from other better horror movies like Nightmare on Elm Street, with the whole like, you have to believe in me to give me power, and like tries to just use like Christianity as like this kind of like crutch, so that way people can be like, ooh, look, they're talking about God and the devil, oh, how risque. Like, yeah, that was risque in like the fucking 90s or whatever, but this movie is just so dated. It's so boring. It almost feels archaic to a certain extent, and it sucks that they use Jeffrey Dean Morgan to this like they underuse him so badly. They also underuse Carrie Ewes, I think is his last name. He's the guy from The Princess Bride who's been kind of making a semi comeback in these like bad horror movies. He was in the 2019 or 2020 version of Black Christmas, and that movie was also fucking terrible. And this film isn't in the same realm as Black Christmas, but it is fucking bad. The whole point that this movie is fucking bad is because it is boring. It doesn't elicit any sort of emotion from you. Like, you're just watching the movie and you're just like kind of bored as shit, and it's so mediocre, and it's just so like, okay, like basically the plot of the movie, like I was saying earlier, is just that they have this Mary character, and she goes in through the body of this character named Alice, who is a deaf mute girl, which I don't know what's Hollywood's obsession with deaf and mute people. Like, they had a deaf mute girl in Godzilla, they have a deaf mute girl in this one, so I don't get what Hollywood's obsession with deaf mute people is or whatever. They're not like a novelty, they're actual real people, so we shouldn't use them as novelties in this movie, or in movies in general, as that's kind of what they use the deaf mute girl in this movie as. And, well, she's deaf and mute, and, well, she's praying to Mary so badly because she wants to not be deaf and mute anymore, and so she gets cured or whatever, and so, Mary goes in through her body and kind of uses her as kind of like a vessel to kind of, like, talk to people and shit like that. And, well, this girl, Alice, that's the girl's name that gets kind of cured or whatever, she starts going around, like, miracle worker style and starts curing fucking people. She cures, well, not really curing a whole lot of people. She cures one person. She cures a little boy of, like, polio or some shit. And I didn't even know people had polio still. Like, again, this movie is very fucking dated. A lot of fucking 1990 things happen in this fucking movie. But, oh, thanks, man. Thanks, Michael, for saying that the intro's pretty cool. Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, dude, it took me a while to kind of, like, fine-tune that intro, and I'm still gonna kind of, like, fine-tune it a little bit more and get it a little bit, more cleaner and stuff like that. But, yeah, what could have used a second pass was, like, this movie. They needed to jumble around some of these parts and put Mary more in the fucking movie. If she's CG, just add her in the fucking movie more. What's so hard about that? She's obviously not a fucking actor that they had to pay. I mean, well, maybe they had to have use somebody for, like, the close-up shots and stuff, which were far and few in between. But, yeah, just add her more into the fucking movie because she's CG. Just use her more. So, yeah, this movie was a very failed attempt at, like, at a horror movie, and they kind of try to leave the door open for another horror movie. Or, you know what? I'm going to take that back. I'm going to strike that from the record. They ended the fuck out of this movie. I forgot, but yeah, at the end of this movie, there is a complete fucking end, and I think even one character in the movie is just like, yeah, you'll never come back because of this, and the other thing, and I don't want to, like, completely fucking spoil it, but they're like, yeah, you're never gonna come back because this happened. But then again, this guy was never supposed to come back because they literally chopped his fucking head off and he still came back. So horror movies can always bring people back, but yeah, I don't think we're gonna be seeing The Unholy Part 2, Mary's Revenge, or anything like that. I think this movie's just gonna die a slow, painful death on the movie theater, which is a weird thing to say. I'm used to saying, like, oh, they're just gonna push it out onto Amazon Prime, and it's just gonna die there, or they're gonna push it onto Netflix, and it's just gonna die there. No, this movie is just gonna fucking die on fucking in the movie theater. That's just all that's gonna happen to this movie, which is weird to say because nobody is gonna watch this fucking movie. I went to go aside from fucking me, I'm the only person that sat through this fucking boring ass piece of shit. I was in the movie theater at the Far Town Cinema. It's the nice one with the fucking reclining chairs, and I was over there at that one, and fucking nobody in the movie theater. Everybody was going to see Godzilla, as they should be. That's the movie that if you're gonna go to the movie theaters and risk getting coronavirus, don't be a fucking idiot like me and go see The Unholy. Go watch Godzilla vs. Kong. If you're gonna risk anything, go risk it for that movie. And if you haven't, go check out my review of Godzilla vs. Kong. Well, there you have it, ghouls and gals. I think I'm going to end it right there. There you go. That's The Unholy. It's not a real worth it watch. If you really are interested in watching it, I'll probably be able to fucking stream it on here on Facebook because I guarantee you nobody gives a fucking shit about this fucking movie. Alright, ghouls and gals. I'm Ryan T, and I'll see you in the next one.
This is the